All right. So our first speaker in the session this morning is Eric Coronel with the American Peanut Council, and his title is Documenting the Sustainability of U.S. Peanut Production. Eric is the Director of Sustainability with APC. He's got a lot of background in other areas, including working for the Alliance for Sustainable Agriculture, and he was a Senior Research Analyst with Deere. So Eric, if you'll come forward. And I will remind the speakers, we've got about 30 minutes in your presentations, and more importantly, don't back up too far because it could get pretty ugly over here. So Eric, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Many of you have heard already, but my first experience with the peanut industry was coming to the Georgia Peanut Tour in 2018, and then I got invited to give a small presentation in the 2019 APRES in Auburn, Alabama, and it was a great experience. I've been used mostly to working with corn and soybean production in the Midwest, and I found the peanut industry very welcoming and very interesting. And back then, I decided that if I ever had a chance to join the peanut industry, I would. And now I found myself in Tifton, Georgia, running this great program. So it's been a great opportunity to be part of this society. Many of you have heard this presentation across the shows and the tours that we have done in the past. The exciting thing today is that we actually have some results to show to the audience, so that's what keeps me going. If we discuss the peanut sustainability footprint for the past 40 years or so, it's really a great story, and that's part of the initiative, to be able to tell the great story of American-grown peanuts to customers, to peanut buyers, and to any stakeholders in the industry. There's an organization I used to work for Field Market. They measure sustainability for many indicators, land use, greenhouse gas emissions, energy use. And the story is over time, the footprint of peanuts has been reduced. And that's what we want to be proactive in collecting this information to enroll growers and to start from the grower side, moving through the supply chain to show what great story peanuts have. In terms of the sustainability portion for APC, many years ago, around 2007 or so, APC started getting involved. We joined Field to Market. We started running pilots. We collaborated with Field to Market to add peanuts to the platform. Cotton is also in the same platform, along with 11 other row crops like corn, soybean, sorghum, wheat. And the supply chain, the industry came together to be able to fund this program for 3 years to be able to start gathering data and see what things look like and what kind of buy-in we got from growers and the rest of the supply chain. So long story short, we had a platform ready by the beginning of the year, and then we collected data for 2021 up to April of this year. The main goal is really a two-pronged approach. First, being able to collect data to tell the story to customers. So if you're a buying point, if you're a sheller, if you're a manufacturer, we aim to collect information that can be used to promote American peanuts. And the second approach, the second goal is to be able to help growers understand their footprint and maybe find ways to improve it over time. It's already really good, but of course, there's always chance for improvement. And that's what many of you work with your research, with your projects, with your graduate students to be able to improve peanut production. We would like to recognize the founding sponsors, and we also like to recognize that we have a new category of supporters. So if you're a private company or an organization that's interested in supporting the initiative, there is definitely a space for you. So the basics is a platform for data collection. If you're familiar with the Cotton Trust Protocol, we are following the same approach. Growers take about an hour and a half to complete every year, the first year. Then every other year they come back. It's much easier to complete. There will be second and third party verifications to be able to confirm to buyers as a story that the data that growers are entering into the system that matches the reality in the farm. And as said before, we're following the same framework as the Cotton Trust Protocol. And it's been a really efficient and resource efficient way to collaborate with the cotton industry to get this going. We'll say in terms of funding, in terms of the initial funds that we have to put to get it started. And I think it's going to be a great program to connect the supply chain. So from the growers to the buying points to the shellers, all the way to the manufacturers, there'll be a way to connect the sustainability story across the entire supply chain. And that's something really exciting. That's something that not even crops with the funds like corn and soybean have been able to do. And with the collaboration with the cotton industry, I think this is something really exciting for peanuts. Getting a little bit into the nitty-gritty, because we all care about this stuff. This is what enrollment looks like for a grower. And the portions highlighted here are what takes the most time for a grower. So there is a self-assessment at the farm level, and then we ask growers to enter 10% of their peanut acres to get an idea of the sustainability metrics at the field level. These are the topics that are covered in the survey. So you have the self-assessment and what we call the field print analysis. So as you look for all the topics that are covered by these questions, then you'll see yourself identifying these topics. If you work in post-harvest, if you work in transportation efficiency, if you work in peanut varieties, in water management, in irrigation, in nutrient, in the crop protection program, all of those areas, all of the work that you do year in, year out, and all your contributions so far have been aggregated in this system because it takes into account a holistic approach for sustainability. So all your research, and you may not know this, but many of your papers are already the background for the platform, all the models or the data, all the factors used in the system, your papers have already contributed to all this information. So I think that's something really exciting to be able to bring it all together. And as I hear that there are new peanut varieties coming into the market for growers in the next few years to reduce, for example, the amount of crop protectants that they may have to apply, that's a very exciting story to capture basically in real time, season by season. Some of the benefits, when we present this to growers, the first thing we hear is, where's money and what's in it for us. And at the moment, we mostly work towards giving farmers sustainability intelligence, if we may, to be able to show them what other participants in the system are doing. So for example, for each one of the questions in the self-assessment, a grower that participates can see how everybody else answer it in the system. And I think that's valuable. A grower in the Southeast may see that 40–50% of all other farmers are doing cover crops or doing other types of management. And that's exciting to learn. It provides a framework for peer-to-peer learning. Growers also get quantitative information in terms of what we call the field print analysis. So this is part of the field survey. All the farming inputs get converted to 8 sustainability metrics, or 7 if it's a non-irrigated field. So growers can learn about greenhouse gas emissions. They can run the models, the same models that USDA runs for soil erosion, for soil, wind, and water erosion. They can run them from their computer for their own fields to see what their rotation does to their fields. So we get soil conservation, soil carbon as an index. We get information about irrigation water use. And I think these are very exciting metrics to learn. It's something new. When I go talking to buying points or shellers, they basically ask growers 2 things, peanut acreage and peanut production. So when we start talking about all these 100 questions to answer, we understand that for farmers, it can be a little bit overwhelming at the beginning. But we're here to learn together, and I think it's a good approach for the industry. And also, like we have heard before, American peanut production goes around 3 million tons per year, and we consume about 2 million tons in the United States, and we need to place a lot of peanuts in the export markets every year. So many customers are starting to ask about sustainability. Canada, one of the biggest buyers, and other countries as well, they care about these topics. I was talking to a sheller the other day, and he said, yeah, I have a customer in France that he asked me, what are you growers doing for sustainability? And, the answer so far is nothing. We have nothing going on. So this provides an avenue for shellers or for other participants in the supply chain to help enroll growers and participate and provide a framework that they can use for their own business. So we'll improve the guidance that we have for this, for the industry, and I think it's something that it will be pretty streamlined to apply for each business. In terms of where we are in the process, so we developed a framework. We started measuring and documenting for the 2021 season. We're open for the current season. And then we hope to establish a baseline for 2-3 years to be able to know what the footprint is, what are the chances of improvement, what are the categories that we need to work on. And then we'd like to work and gather and convene as an industry to set goals. That's one of the first things that I hear when I communicate with other NGOs and stakeholders. They want to know, okay, what are the peanut sustainability goals? And what we're saying is we are working to collect the baseline. I think it will be a mistake to try to set goals without industry input, of course, and doing before knowing a baseline. Depending on how the weather turns out, last season was excellent. This season is turning out to be a little bit different. So we want to see what kind of weather we get for 2-3 years, what kind of results we have to establish a baseline, and then work as an industry to work goals. In terms of a little bit of data, so this is what 2021 counties were represented in the first year of the platform. So you see there were very active shellers in some portions of the country that really see the value on this. So 69 growers participated, represented about 2.5% of the total acres for the year. And, some people say like, okay, this is a great number. Some people say like, oh, this is a very disappointing number. To me, it's a great number. Take into account these 69 growers, they basically put about 140 hours of free labor into the system to be able to enter the data, get it started, and show that growers are willing to participate if the incentives is right and if they find value into the system. Representation of acreage, we have a lot of growers from Arkansas and Missouri, and also Georgia, Florida, and in the Southeast, in what we call the Delta region. So we saw a lot of participation from those states, and we're working with a lot of shellers across the supply chain to bring them together into the system. For a little bit of information about what kind of growers we have, so in the table on the left, you see that 90% of growers also grow cotton, and then 60% grow corn, and so on. In terms of what other crops they grow, so we see that about 80% of participants grow at least 3 crops in their farm. So it was pretty common to see, as you know, peanuts, cotton, and corn into the systems, and then many other crops as well. But I think it's interesting to learn from these growers some information that usually isn't collected this way. So with that information too from the farmers, we can build what we call weighted averages or composite numbers for the industry. So you can see kind of weighted averages that we have for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the herbicide program, the crop protection program, irrigation rates, and so on. I wanted to bring your attention to the greenhouse gas emissions. So for example, you see that the composite number for the program was 0.15 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent per pound of peanuts, or 300 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent per ton of peanuts. So to get an idea of what kind of footprint it is, what do those numbers mean? That's one of the first questions we hear too. So let's say that in 2022, we reached the goal of the National Peanut Board to consume 10 pounds of peanuts per person in the United States. So if we multiply that by 0.15, that gives us 1.5 pounds of CO2 equivalent per pound of peanuts. So that footprint is the same as driving a Toyota Camry for 2 miles. So those are the same type of emissions. So if a person were to consume 10 pounds of peanuts during a year, it's the same footprint as driving a medium-sized car about 2 miles. So that's just to put it a little bit into context. And some of the data that we can see also come from the self-assessment. Like I said, there are about 100 questions or so that get collected, and we have a lot of information to showcase what great management farmers are doing. In terms of the field print analysis, we can see what kind of footprint we have in terms of the aggregated averages, and for 5 out of the 8 metrics for all the metrics that have benchmarks, we were able to measure the benchmarks, the program averages were well below the benchmarks. The benchmarks are due for a little bit of an update later this year, but I think that we'll see we having a great footprint for the industry. I know a lot of scientists in the room, you care about what data looks like in the background. I'm a big fan about showing data, the distribution and each outcome. Not a huge fan of bar charts, so this is the type of data that I like to show. So in the y-axis, you see that we have the greenhouse gas emissions per pound of peanuts, and each data point that you see in the graph, it's data from an individual field that got enrolled in the program. So the main message here is that 90% of the fields enter into the system score below the national benchmark from field to market. And that's a great portion of the story. It means that there is a lot of efficiency already happening in the industry. And of course, there's always things that we can improve, but it's great to start collecting this baseline. The amount of detail that we collect also allows us to see where these emissions are coming from. So for example, we can partition the greenhouse gas emissions categories into the tillage portion, into the crop protection program, the fertilizers, the irrigation, and so on. So what we learned from this past season is about 56% of all the emissions are coming from the tillage and the applications of fertilizer and the crop protective products. If you're familiar with the USDA NRCS models for soil carbon, this is the soil conditioning index. And then based on the rotation that growers are applying, we can see if they're gaining soil organic matter or if this is stable or we're losing organic matter. There are a lot of caveats and limitations to this metric. Basically, the data is as good as the rotation that a grower enters into the system, and that's a work in progress. But it's great to know that we can start telling growers if the rotation is likely to cause them to lose soil carbon in the soils, or if is the erosion unacceptable based on other metrics. So this is just great information to start collecting to get an idea about the areas of improvement. In terms of soil conservation, so this is your wind and water loss. So basically tons of soil loss per acre. Based on the rotations that we had this year, 96% of the fields score below the benchmark, that is 11 tons per acre. But if we remember the NRCS T factor usually runs between 1 to 5 tons of soil loss per acre. So keeping those numbers down, of course, it will be a positive thing. But again, this is just great information to start collecting as an industry to be able to apply these models in each of peanut production fields in the US and learn as an industry. We hope to, like I said earlier, one of the main messages, one of the main goals of the initiative is to create messages to promote American peanuts to the world. We have a lot of peanuts to place in export, and many buyers may appreciate this information and this data. So as an industry, we'll work through these messages. This is just a rough draft, but it's a way to get started. So for example, as an industry, we can talk that the sample of growers that participated score below the benchmarks for many of these metrics, the energy use, greenhouse gas emissions. We know that growers are applying a lot of really good management practices, and that's something that we always try to tell growers. You are already doing a lot of good management practices. Let's just showcase it. Let's show the results of what you're already doing. And then, in general, I believe that the data that we have shows that peanut production is very resource efficient, and it's just a good story to have. Of course, we'll find ways to improve, but it's a great baseline to start. In terms of how can universities participate, we have a role into the platform. We call it trusted representative, and this is something for example, university extension staff. If you want to have research projects, if you want to help a few growers enroll into the system, you can register as a trusted representative and act as a proxy to help growers with a little bit of data entry. And also it may help you learn about the system. Something else we'll appreciate from university partners is raising a little bit of awareness about the initiative in conversation with growers. Many of them hadn't heard about, for example, the Just protocol, even though it's been running for 3 years or so. And also raising the awareness that we have a sustainability initiative for peanuts will be really important. Something that will be very beneficial too for this program will be for universities to participate in this organization called Field to Market, which produces the sustainability benchmarks for peanuts. So your data, your research, your models can be applied into the background system to be able to improve the data quality for peanuts. So for example, the post-harvest portion of the platform, the one that talks about peanut drying and a little bit of the transportation, that's all based on data and research from Dr. Chris Potts at the National Laboratory. And I think that's very impactful. Every field that gets run into the system runs Dr. Potts models, and I think that's a great story. So if you participate in Field to Market to improve the peanut data, the background information, the models, your impact can reach the entire 1.5 million acres for peanuts in the United States. And I think that's a good story to have. If I were a department head, if I knew that you were working on this, I'll give you an automatic food professorship, but that's just up to me. And I think you can also run sustainability research under the umbrella of the platform. I think it'll be useful for you to learn about how the data gets processed, the models, how they run, and it will give you a lot of information about what kind of information the industry, the peanut buyers are looking for to improve the peanut sustainability. Again, we're barely getting started. We are enrolling for 2022, and we look forward to collaborating with you all to make the peanut sustainability footprint even better. Thank you for your time.
We have time for one quick question if we have one from the audience.
My question is, I know that we have these benchmarks that are coming to the field market. Do we know how we compare with other countries that they have something like this in terms of sustainability? We're trying to market ourselves, obviously we love sustainability, but we know what other countries are doing, and we have these benchmarks there, especially greenhouse gases.
Yeah, so the Field to Market benchmarks are US specific, but one of our short-term goals is to understand the footprint of other peanut origins and try to find a way to compare apples to apples to get a good idea about how we stack against other countries. So that's definitely on our goals. Thank you.